Yeah, hi Juliet. How are you? Juliet, since you're a guest, I don't know if you can use chat to ask questions. You may be able to, but if you would like to come up on stage and use your microphone, you can sign in as an official, Start Mata member, and you can do that for 6 days for free as a supporter, and then you can come on stage and talk directly with Irina and get feedback, advice, insights, questions answered. So feel free to do that. And Justin, you as well, feel free, raise your hand or use the text chat to say, I'd love to come on stage. Or if you don't want to come on stage, just use the text chat too. So those that are tuning in now as we're about to go live, Irina is available to answer your questions. Use the text chat to ask your questions. I will relay them to Irina. If you have, something you're working on, you don't really have a direct question, you just want some basic kind of like, feedback, insights, advice, feel free to use the text chat too. Just share what you got going on, what you want to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what your, career path changes, whatever related to Irina. And with that, Irina, please introduce yourself.
Sure, no, Gary, thank you for having me. And thank you for everyone for joining. I right now help funds and accelerators evaluate AI startups, and my first career was inventing, developing, and scaling algorithms globally across different industries. And I'm a seasoned mentor. I've mentored many different communities, including 8 to 5 startups, from idea to MVP to scale, and kind of i- mentor across the board from fundraising, AI, product, and other things as they come up. So no question too small. Feel free to, see what we can help with.
Amazing. So
No.
while we wait for some questions to come in, I see Junie's typing. So yeah, Junie, you can also, since you're over here on Start Model where we're hosting this, if you want to, you can come up on stage and use your microphone, camera optional. So feel free to do that. Just let me know. Again, if anyone's feeling shy over here on Start Mata, just use the text chat to ask questions or share what you have going on, and we'll do it that way. And yeah, as I shared in the other services that we're on, like LinkedIn and Twitch and YouTube. Yeah, again, please just use the text chat because you can't use your microphone and camera. While we're waiting for questions, though, Irina, this comes up all the time. This conversation I've had with you a little bit in private a while ago because I'm working on it myself. But people are consistently looking for advisors and trying to figure out how to navigate that and what they're supposed to offer them, how that looks, what the compensation is, and more than that, what the engagement is that they're asking from the advisor. We've had conversations about that too, where some founders are looking for an employee, not an advisor. So I'd love to hear, your advice on how to approach that, the right way to think about that, but also how to not rush into that because an advisor, like, an investor or a co-founder is a long-term relationship in a professional setting. So what do you got?
Yeah, no, this is a really good question. I would say my kind of 3 or 4 different takes on this. So the first is to your point of how to think about the right advisor. And I would frame it as first,
To hear,
like, what gaps
your
are you trying to fill, you as a founder, how you um and kind of how do you receive information in the best way possible. So what I mean by that is, I think a lot of the time, and I actually get a lot of cold outreach on LinkedIn where somebody's just like, "Can you be my advisor?" I'm like, "Okay, but what do you need me specifically?" Right? Like, what gaps you're trying to fill, and are you open to one word that investors throw around, they'll say coachable. I don't know if I like the word coachable. I feel like I prefer the word probably receptive. Like, what I do as a founder is I will play devil's advocate. So what I mean is I will ask questions around, there's no perfect answers. There's always trade-offs. There's never enough time or money or anything. And so when you come up with a challenge, I tend to just ask questions wearing different hats. So, like one example, one question that I get all the time is, well, how much data do we need to have a good algorithm? I'm like, okay, that's great. So first, like the data scientist in me is like, all the data, obviously. Like collect as much as you want. The more information you have, the better it is. The product hat is, well, what's the smallest thing that you have available that you can just try it now? The investor hat is, well, how much is that going to cost? Is this like 5 figures of storage? And probably the more practical side, the experienced data scientist will say, try with what you have, and then you'll see where the gaps are, and that'll inform the next decision. Maybe what you'll see is you actually don't have any data, or you actually can't tell who was a who actually downloaded the app and who actually bought something. And so that'll inform that process. The way that I engage again is just asking questions and playing devil's advocate. And I will tell you, some founders really hate that. They're like, just tell me the answer. And I'm like, I have no idea. I only have as much context that you could tell me. And also, you're the expert. I can just tell you based on what I've seen, 50 other startups do. Some went off the rails here, some had things happen here, and so we can talk through the different scenarios. So again, like I'm not a great advisor for many startups because of just how I prefer, like I kind of wear the educator hat of, here's some resources, here's questions to ask, here's different directions to explore. You make that decision of where you want to go. For the compensation. So I will also play devil's advocate here because I know a popular agreement is the Founders Institute FAST agreement that says, you deliver this and you get this much equity. I struggle with that one so much, and I actually decline and have my lawyer draft one for me that, I negotiate with a founder because um it is, well, one, I usually advise on the algorithm side, and it's really hard to say I will deliver XYZ because we don't know what the data looks like. You don't know what it looks like, I don't know what it looks like, there's no guarantees. It could look great offline, you go to the customer side, so much changed. And then the other part is, it's really easy to phone it in to say, okay, you get this much equity if you do these many introductions. Well, it doesn't talk about the quality, doesn't say who's gonna, and I'd rather just make the intros than make that part of the why I'm getting the compensation. And then also, just because I'm super specialized, I think the fast agreement, I think the compensation's like 0.25%. And I do ask for more. I do ask closer to 1%. So just for transparency, that's vested monthly over 1 to 2 years, again, depending on, to Gary's point, the time commitment and what you want me to do. The way that I structure it is, these are monthly meetings that you do all the prep work, I show up, and then we discuss different directions. If you have me do implementations, again, I'm not an employee, that's part of a consulting agreement. And if it's a little bit more hands-on strategy, like I have to review docs and give feedback, again, that's a little bit higher equity, but there's no hands-on, like I'm doing the algorithms or things like that. And then obviously there's, as Gary pointed out, like someone employees, and that is completely illegal. You can't actually just get paid in equity. And there's a whole set of Gary does have a lot of, community where we have, lawyers come speak, and, there's a whole thing of like misclassification, like who's a contractor when they should be an employee and things like that. So yeah, really, really good question. Hopefully that helps. Happy to dig into anything. And I see Junie also has raised her hand.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that. And yeah, we got some people appreciating that. Matt over on YouTube says that's the best kind of advisor, Irina. So heck yeah.
Oh, well, thank you.
Awesome. All right, Junie, let me try to get you up here. To co-host. Okay, you should have an invitation. All right.
Hi, Rina. Sorry, Gary, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, thank you so much. I actually text my question in the chat, and I just have a little bit questions regarding customer validations. I currently have MVP. I'm doing like a 2C AI product. Um, but I have asked around my friends, families to see if they like my products, but they always say, "Oh yeah, I like it. I might use it," but it's really hard to know whether they like it or not. So I kind of want to find some like-minded people, like a startup founders or something that will give a genuine feedback or something, or just not even startup founders, just a random person that might be my potential customers. But I don't have like such a broad networks to know so many people that can help me do this. So I'm just trying to see if any advice on how to do customer validations if you're in my situation. And I do have a second question is after the customer validations, how do we normally get the initial customers for it? It's because I don't have too much money to spend on marketing, and I'm just bootstrapping it. I mean, at some point I can raise funds, but right now I just want to see if any possibility just to get the customers without having heavy marketing. That's all
Yeah.
my questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, no problem. Yeah, these are really great questions. These are very, very topical. We get them most of the time. I'm gonna give you the top three kind of answers, and we're gonna dig into all of them. And then obviously, Gary, feel free to jump in as well. So the first one is I would say I know you started with getting feedback from customers. So, and I'm not saying you didn't do this, but a lot of founders I see forget to actually do customer interviews before even developing. So you kind of hear the jobs to be done framework of, talk to potential customers before even developing to understand the pain points. For some that have been in the industry and know the pain points, even then they might forget what does that actually look like, because then you'll be able to use their language to kind of bring them more value. And one example, one sort of vague but slightly specific example that I see is medical and health tech startups will end up talking about their products in very medical terms. And I see these, I evaluate all sorts, and the medical say, "Oh, this is like this condition, this thing." And I'm like, "But I'm not a doctor. Like, I don't understand. Like, what is my value here?" Um, and I remember, I think it was like 2 years ago, one startup pitched, and it was a way to kind of change the workflow for a certain surgery. And they show the picture of like this is the thing and this is where our thing were, and for a non-physician, I'm like, I don't know, this looks fine. And then a surgeon in the audience is like, this is the most riskiest procedure ever. Like if I had to do, I would not start with this. And to the point of like to those of us that are not initiated, like, I don't know, this seems great. Like I'm not a surgeon, but it seems cool. But for those that no, they have a different take on it. All of which is to say, to first just understand who has the pain point, like a really true pain point. And the so that's kind of the jobs to be done framework. Gary and I also touch on this every single time, and we'll go through this. And I love discussing this as well as the fake door tag. And then the third one, if you already have the product, being able to track it in your data from who downloaded the app to actually who started engaging, where did the drop off happen, are you able to track the drop offs of who went to pay and then the checkout was broken, so being able to track that will go a long way. um and then before we dive into the fake door tag, I do want to answer your second question because it is such an important one, because I do see many startups are fundraising to do the marketing, and then that's less of a selling point to investors because right, if you're like, okay, I'm raising $1 million, but three-quarters I'm going to give away to Google and Facebook, like, well, why? So that point is very valid. And the short answer is to try to go where your customers go and find those network effects. And then that becomes part of your pitch of actually, we're not raising money to do marketing. We have the network effects, and that helps you stand out. So, one example, I mentored, like, what is a network effect? I mentored the startup completely non affiliated in Techstars. And so what they're doing is they're essentially building their own Keurig, but for protein shakes. And so what those network effects could look like is if you're right now, and actually I have again not affiliated with any pro, I'm not going to say what the brand is, but like I'm drinking protein shakes, but there's a company that only sells the liquid ones and it costs a lot to ship it. Well, they can then get into the powdered business, so then they can make like a Keurig equivalent little pod that goes into the system. And then whoever's in the powdered business, it's like, oh, I haven't been in the liquid business. Let me go in and be part of your pod and send you the powder. And you can then, again, expand their business. So it kind of aligns incentives of why they might want to work with them. Um, of to say, okay, we'll give you a powder. We can even potentially give you our customers, right? Depends on what that negotiation is. And I don't know. They were kind of in the beginning stages of those partnership negotiations, but that aligns incentives and they don't have to go marketing. They could just go to whatever the protein powder is or the shake. They're like, yeah, of course we want to expand our customer base. So that makes it a much stronger selling proposition. And then those network effects will then you don't have to do less marketing. So um I mean, that's one example. The other one could be, to get customers, if we're talking medical devices, a specific surgical conference for the specific surgery, or maybe there's, other conferences or other ways you can do presentations. It doesn't actually have to be pitches, um, but trying to pinpoint um, very, very specific customer profiles from the first part, of who are those customers. So one example, I'll also hear startups that'll be like, okay, one that I heard was kind of like, we're a puppy training app for, to train your puppy. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have a puppy, but like, is this like 3 to 6 month old for this breed that has these problems? Or is this any puppy at all with any problems? The more specific you can get, the more you can say, oh, well, this is this specific, like, Chihuahua that's 2 months old that's struggling with this. Great. Okay, where do the Chihuahuas go? Like, where do they hang out? Where's the shelter? Where are those events? And that makes it much, again, easier said than done, but it makes it much easier to see where do you go. If it also helps, personal experience, it took me about 5 years to land my elevator pitch to say, like, I help funds with diligence. Before I would just say, oh, well, like if you have a data problem, like I'm here, and it's just like, okay, well, how does that help me? Right. And you hear about niching and things like that. I'm like, well, I don't know. Why should I niche? But now if I say, okay, now I know to meet an investor, I'm gonna go to demo day. But actually, that doesn't help them kind of pull the trigger. What actually ends up working is if I go to investor day and I'm one of the investors asking the questions and doing the diligence, they can see, oh, you're asking these questions I wouldn't have known to ask. You should help us with our next evaluation. So that makes it hopefully more concrete, but also more specific of based on who my specific customer audience is, where do I need to go and where do I need to, market? And then I don't have to do marketing. I just need to know, okay, how do I sign up to go judge? and
Well, thank you so much. Irina. Am
yeah.
I allowed to ask a follow-up questions? Or
Let's do, I guess
okay,
depending if you don't mind, because there are other people in the chat or
okay,
other people in
sounds good.
attendance, but yeah, feel free to also drop them, and as we're waiting, we'll take them along. And then I highly recommend, looking at the fake door tag. We have in other office hours, we always talk about that, and if there's time we can go through that as well. But basically the short answer is, what is a fake door tag?
Test,
Before
test,
developing
test.
something,
Fake door
before,
test.
sorry, yes,
It's
fake
okay.
door test, yes, fake door test, yes. Before developing something, you, on your website or say, hey, this is coming soon. It's almost available. Like, do you have, can you give us your credit card? And you don't actually log the credit card, but when they put it in, you say, okay, actually, this is coming soon. We'll let you know. So then it's, who's most willing to pay. And I don't know if Gary, you want to add anything before.
Yeah, I mean, a couple quick things just to build on that.
Yeah.
Like the first thing you want to do before you build anything is do proper research, and you want to spend time, like Irina said, with your intended customers. learning where they hang out, what they do, what their existing behaviors are as they relate to the product or service that you want to bring to market and provide to them, but also what past experiences they've had, either seeking out a similar service or experience or product or outcome that these things provide them, or what they've done to cobble together something between random things, right? MacGyvering something for those of us old enough that remember what MacGyver is. But just cobbling something from existing services like Google, spreadsheets mixed with Zoom mixed with something else, right? Like that's how they're managing this aspect of their life or their business, right? So that's still a competitor to what you're doing. You need to provide them something that's more enjoyable, accessible, beneficial, and thus it's going to provide them with more value compared to what they have. So spend time really learning about them and their habits, their expectations they have for things in the market that are similar to this, their experiences, and how those experiences shape those expectations they have. And then you gather all the information, you start designing what you think your product should be or your service, and that's when you can move on to the fake door test. And as Irina said, you want to be as specific as possible while also avoiding any sort of technical language or jargon. Because the more you make someone's brain work, the more likely they are going to stop paying attention to you and just go off on all these like endless tangents. Doesn't matter what you're saying. The moment that you're requiring them to use their brain and really imagine something, it's going to go off the rails from the trip of storytelling that you're laying out for them, right? So be really clear, be really simple in how you explain things, and concise. Be very concise too. And because in all these situations, it's about having a conversation. And as long as the person's still interested in what you're saying and following along, they're going to want to hear more. They'll ask follow-up questions, and then you can add on to the details to that. So be aware of that, especially when you're putting together a fake door test in your landing page, because you don't want them to be like misinterpreting what you want to sell them or provide to them. You want to show them. And we talk about this all the time when you're building this, like landing pages, and landing page, you use a fake door test, or use with a fake door test. Storyboard what that user experience will be of getting onboarded and using your product to obtain this specific benefit in these specific use cases that fit who you're selling this to. Like Irina said, it's not just like anyone that has a puppy. It's very specific people that are encountering this experience in their life that's frustrating or troublesome or a headache in some way, and you're going to be like, look, use this for this situation, this case, because we're serving you. We learned about you, not everyone, right? So super important. All right, so we'll jump back into other fun stuff. We got some more questions. We got Justin wants to come up next, and then again, Junie, if we have time, we'll definitely bring you back.
And we have two other questions also from the start moving from idea to building and then collecting the data. So I guess we'll do Justin and then the next two questions.
Yes. All right, cool.
Great.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hello.
All right. Yeah, my name is Justin. I am a software developer with 25 years experience and ex-Amazon. For the last 90 days, I've been building, all in on building out an MVP for an AI-first development framework that provides an instant production-ready full-stack launchpad for greenfield projects. I am soon running out of self-funded runway and will have to return to the full-time workforce while continuing this endeavor on the side. How do I decide the best time to pitch to potential investors versus gathering initial potential customers to validate the idea?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. And, similar to Junie's, right? So I think my first recommendation, right, is like based on what you said, it sounds like anyone that wants to develop anything for any customer can use the framework. So I think my first advice there would be to make it as specific as possible to see, who, when you're pitching this to, who is this resonating for? is this for regulated industries? Is this going to be HIPAA compliant so that healthcare startups or medtech startups would be interested? Is this for non-technical teams that want to launch something but don't have the expertise and then could use that framework? So really nailing down who do you think is going to be most beneficial? Who do you think it'll benefit the most? So that when you are ready to and who's willing to pay for it, right? At the end of the day, because um investors I feel like because it's such a hard time to fundraise, not just for startups but also for investors, there's definitely been a moving of the goalposts. The more you can talk about traction and LOIs or letters of intent, or to say, okay, once this is built out, I have 10 customers that already jump on. So if you give us, however much, we're going to return this within a year, right? The more compelling that story becomes, the easier it is to sell. But if you can also, again, easier said than done, if you can have paying customers that get you through, the next 90 days and the next 90 days after that, that makes it an even more compelling story. So I think my first thing would just be really, really nailing down who that customer is. Having said that, the other part would be, um, okay, let's say, it's already developed and you're still figuring out customers. The other part I would recommend alternatively is some accelerators will give you money. Or take no equity. Um, check out, and they have different things to, one thing that I always ask of every accelerator and mentor is, what is your outcome for your cohort? For many of them, it's a pitch deck. For others, it's not. It's actually like, how do we help you with your product and go to market and customer discovery and all of those? So, just because you're going the investor route, maybe there's other opportunities there as well. So it's, you don't get the dilution, you get to meet with other mentors and things like that to actually find out, one, maybe that gets you more runway, maybe that gets you, a more, help you figure out how to validate that idea. So hopefully that helps, but I would say probably those two different directions, because the more what your goal is, I would say, is your goal is, if you're going the investor route, it's the traction so that you can prove this is how much I de-risked. Because at the end of the day, the one kind of like background of maybe like how funds work is that if it's a $10 million fund, um let's say they invest all 10 million. Actually, they don't. There's such a thing as, like investment fees, other fees, things like that. But what happens is, let's say they invest a million into 10 startups. We all hear the statistic that 90% of startups fail. So what that means is they invested 10 million to 10 startups. Nine of those failed. So everything's riding on one. Well, if you and let's say, again, for simplicity and math's sake, they get 10% of ownership. So it's 10% for $1 million. So if you exit down the line at $100 million, they get 10% of that, which is 10. So they just broke even on their whole investment. And actually, after 10 years, because that's how long it might take, they actually lost money after inflation. So, what investors are looking for is, how do you get to 500 million or $1 billion? What is your story? How have you de-risked? What is that market and where's that need? So that it makes it, every startup's risky, but it makes it a slightly de-risked thing, so that when you're pitching, that's what I would recommend, having your eye towards. So hopefully that helps, of just like, who's the customer, how are you going to pitch to investors, and maybe it's accelerators. Normally I would say grants, but I think grants, it's a much bigger challenge right now. And I don't know if, Gary, if you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing there is, like you're touching on, is you're in competition with every other deal coming across their desk, their email inbox, LinkedIn, their, if they have an intake, a funnel on their website, here's how you can apply, all those different things. And yeah, like there's so many different factors at play to consider what is going to stand out and resonate with an investor, that you need to be aware of that and do the research into that. Research what their investment thesis is, research what their personal interests are, what their existing portfolios look like, what their background expertise is, what their field of study was, all these different things. And you really want to craft your story around that. And it also touches on a little bit of what you were talking about earlier with, leveraging like network effects, essentially, where you're looking for those strategic partners that can bring value to your company, but you can bring value to them as well to help both of you grow either faster or more efficiently, reduce costs, whatever it is. And if you're doing research into these different investors, either angels or VCs or even incubators, accelerators, right? If you're able to identify those different potential strategic partners that exist in these portfolios they already have, then it's going to give you a more unique story to tell and be like, hey, during, whether it's that introductory kind of conversation or in your pitch that you're giving them, touch on that and be like, look, here's how I feel like our company can bring really unique value to your portfolio, not just to your the possibility of an exit, but how we can help these companies or this specific company that you already have ownership in be stronger because of us being a part of this larger diverse portfolio that you have. So do the research and everything like that, and tell a story that's specific to that group, that investor, right? Same thing with like the customers we're talking about. You want to make sure that you're always gearing your story, it's a persuasive story, to the audience, and you show them that you did your research and you understand who you're pitching to and why you're pitching to them. The other stuff too is in terms of timing, and we talk about this all the time. Don't rush out the door and start pitching people. Don't do that. Instead, focus on how you can facilitate and foster authentic relationships with investors. Seek them out as mentors. You don't have to ask them to be a mentor. Never ask someone to be a mentor. Just seek them out and be like, hey, I would love your advice on this. I really admire you because of that. Can I buy you a coffee and spend 30 minutes with you? Or can I jump on a call for 30 minutes, 20 minutes? It's very small ask because you're asking for a favor. Their time, like yours and everyone else's, is invaluable. We only have 24 hours in the day, right? And these other people are being bombarded all the time. So you got to show extra respect. And if you're coming at it from, hey, I really want to learn from you, and you make them feel empowered to share by helping you learn and grow from their opinions, their background experience, their insights, whatever it is, there's a good chance they're going to be like, you know what, I can make a little bit of time for you, sure. But you got to be aware too, they might not have time. So this is like an ongoing relationship building exercise where you don't get upset. You don't bother them and be like, hey, did you see my email 3 days ago? And then you send another email in 2 days. Hey, do you see my email? It's fucking annoying. Don't do that stuff. But instead, send them a follow-up maybe once a month, maybe 6 weeks after you reach out, and be like, hey, I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. I really want to learn from you still. Here's what I've done since I last reached out to you. Like just a sentence or two, just to demonstrate that you're not just waiting around and waiting for this person to be your savior, but you're actually working hard and you're doing stuff. And you can also demonstrate, like Irina was saying earlier, like this notion of being coachable or a good listener or adaptable, all these different things that are really good qualities that they're looking for, these intangibles, right? So that's what I got on that. You got more? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I was gonna play, if I may play devil's advocate, my only thing is completely agree with building relationships, and that doesn't mean send a deck as the first thing. And I would actually say, I do get asked, hey, can I just pick your brain? And I do get many requests, unfortunately. So my thing is actually make it even smaller commitment, have a very specific ask that will take a minute or 5 tops that I could just reply, and probably reply and just say, actually, I have a blog post on this here. If you have any questions, let me know, because it is a big ask. And so to make it as small as possible, and just be, I think one thing that I enjoy, how I try to build relationships with everyone is just, what do you need support with, or who do you need introductions to? What do you like to know? And if there's an event that I think they would be interested in, I send that. It doesn't take, there's no ask. It's just like, hey, I thought of you. Here's an event. If you want to, you know, attend together, or just thought this is relevant, that is, again, takes 2 seconds and is much easier than saying like, oh, can I pick your brain for an hour? But it is still helpful. It's just, okay, I would probably recommend, and again, I'm not affiliated with Gary's Precelerator, but Gary has a Precelerator, and host events where just like dedicated time, like right now, where you can pick my brain. But somebody reaches out afterwards, is like, okay, can I just pick your brain for an hour? And I was like, I just unfortunately did not have time. Um, so I do want to be mindful of all the other questions. So maybe we'll do, like rapid fire, quick, for the other ones. So
Yeah,
which are great, and then we can. So the next one was, how do I start moving from idea stage to actually building? This is a really great question. So I'm a big fan, and I think Gary, we talk about this all the time. So I'm a big fan of having an MVP that you can consistently get customer feedback on. And the way to do that is, again, I'm a big fan of interactive wireframes, like no code. I know everyone's gonna be like, but I can just vibe code the heck out of this. Sure, just vibe code the heck out of it. Like, whatever is the easiest thing you can do to get an MVP out, to actually get in front of customers and see who will pay, who's using. Again, a big fan of interactive wireframes or no code apps. If you're proficient and you can no, if you can vibe code it in an hour and it works, yes, that's not going to get you to scale, but the faster, whatever it takes, however you're comfortable. Maybe it's a Google form. There's no shame. It's whatever you need to help inform that next decision of where's that interest. Like the fake door test could be, a Google site, like that's free, or a Google form, or an Airtable, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're not judging. You want to just start validating the hypothesis. So that would be my recommendation. I don't know, Gary, anything you want to add before we go to the next one?
yeah. I mean, with that, the first thing you should be doing in terms of building is your product specifications, your wireframes. And a lot of that can be done with, I mean, all of that can be done with a pencil and paper, notebooks, a whiteboard. Just so your idea isn't intangible in your brain, you have blueprints. And those blueprints include, you know, uh, your branding documents, your mission statement, your culture statement, your value statement. You should have that for your personal life. So you're always like aware of what your actions are going to be, and that they are in alignment with those things. Same thing for your business. That's how you establish a brand. You want to have consistency and clarity with those things. And then, going back to your product, if you're going to build a product, you know, everything you're building should represent that as well. But then these blueprints include, user stories, user types, user flows, and then the actual mock-ups of your screens, every single screen and every UI state on each of those screens. So you don't have to question how this should work and how it relates to anything. And then also, again, like, the more technical aspects of like what your product is doing, the technical details on every single one of those screens. Like, what is this input related to? What database is it touching? And if you're not technical, you can still use, critical thinking to imagine what it should be doing. And if you have that all laid out, then you can take it to a technical person. They'll be like, oh, I get what you mean. Oh, I know how to do this the right way, right? Same thing. You're going to show that to, potential customers. You at least know what screens looking at that to use for your fake door test, and, learn how to design or hire a designer and just be like, here, mock up these 7 screens that really capture what I'm trying to like sell to these people so we can run a test. So
Yeah.
real simple stuff before you do anything like hard coding or building in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah. And, again, for those that are a little bit more technical, can debug, then you could take those specs and sure, put it into your favorite vibe coding thing and say, this is what I want. Like, how do you, connect it to that database? Like how, and then you'll see, does it match what you said? And then iterate from there, prompted to see, how far it can take. Because again, for the MVP, it does not matter how. I mean, okay, design doesn't matter, but again, you're not going to use the vibe coded thing once you actually, you're using it to test out the customer demand. So then moving on to the next question, which touches on this, is how specifically does one collect this data? Um, and go to competitors and solicit customer data. So for the first part, I'm going to take it literally on like, how does one collect the data? So because now you have the wireframe, you can interact, or you have the app. My recommendation is, one, whatever event or action, you should be able to log it to a database. So what does that mean? So take your incognito window or whatever, click around, do some stuff, and then check, did it actually get logged in your Excel spreadsheet, your Google form, whatever the back end is, HubSpot. Like, what you clicked on, did that actually happen? And then what you're looking to do is, and I have this talk on my website. It was called Building and Scaling with AI, or Finding Product Market Fit, Product Led Growth. What you're looking for then is tracking, for instance, how many customers went from download to activation to purchase, like who dropped off. So being able to track the time it takes, how much money you got from them, that'll be the kind of the ultimate goal. But being able to see, like, did you actually collect all of the, when somebody pressed next, or when they went to this tab? Because one thing that I see all the time is, I'll get a request to say, okay, how do we decide what feature to build? I'm like, okay, great. Well, how many people use the feature that this thing is going to be built on? They're like, oh, that's a good question. We've never checked. It's like 3 people. Okay, great. So let's not build a feature on top of that. You don't have enough volume. Um, so so that's on the part of like collecting the data. The soliciting customers' data, um, so on the, do you go to the competition? So that is a really good question. So I feel like there's a lot of publicly available information, and obviously, feel free to ask your favorite, ChatGPT, Gemini, and just like, hey, who are my competitors? Where are those resources? Like, who are these people to do kind of the, what is that code? What is that called? Of just like the synthetic users, to do that, to maybe initial product discovery, to find out who to go after and then get actual specific details. And then touching on this is somebody else's question coming up of like validating to join is, if you're going to ask for UGC, like user generated content, you have to provide them value for them to do it. Think of like the usual is like the, Fitbit, MyFitnessPal, of like, why do I have to log, what tracks the steps versus you have to log the weight or what you ate, what is the incentive for them to do it? Like, what is that outcome? Um, so, and then of course, the non-legal advice is, just make sure, if you're going after the competition, like, do you have the right contracts in place? The last thing is, you don't want to be sued and things like that. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if, Gary, you want to add anything before we go to the next question
Doctor's had a
about.
couple clarifying statements and questions that I added to the bottom here.
Oh, let's see. Okay. Let's see. I understand how to collect data inside of an app, but what if the product is not an app? How do you collect the data before creating the product to determine where the pressure points are, as you suggested, or pain points? So, not sure I understand the first part of it's not an app. I guess I would just say,
Well, I think
let's call it a workflow, or yeah, what were you
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say?
So I mean, the context of that, I believe, is like for a business that's not building an app. Like, let's say someone's making, wants to start like a restaurant or I don't know. Like, I know Dr. Paxman was set on doing like a gaming cafe. So these types of businesses that aren't technologically, rooted as an application, but there are other types of business that you would be collecting data about, users, customers, and all that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So it's like not a, so the gaming cafes, I guess I'm assuming it's like a cafe where people go to game,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, I guess, the app is, I guess I was using app in the loosest term. I would call it, I would still, we can say it'd still be a product, right? Like your cafe is a product that people are willing to go to, like similar restaurant. People decide who to go to. And so what you would track there is, for instance, where are you advertising? Who's converting? What games are they playing? Who's showing up? Who's paying? Can you check how long they're gaming? Like how good is the quality of that stream, like all of those things. Maybe that's a bit in the weeds, but again, I just like half made those up. But the question is like, what value are you providing? So if the value is, we let you play a game with less lags than you would on your Switch at home, blah, blah, blah. You want to be able to track like how many games are, what is that lag time? Like, what is that? All of those things. So whatever you're collecting has to still tie back to the value you're providing. And back to somebody's earlier pitch, like then when you're pitching, you have to close the loop on that. So if your value again is like, we reduce the lag, you need to show how you do that. And you need to show how the customer that comes in, where they're getting the value. Um, let's see. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Um, and then somebody else followed up on the, do I build yeah, and then happy to answer if there's more questions. So go straight to building or do the research. So that is a really good question. I'm going to answer it 3 different ways, right? So the first one is, if you already have expertise, like let's say the gaming, you're already well versed in the gaming, you game a lot, all of those things, where those pain points are, you can do a wireframe mockup and get in front of customers. For those that are new to an industry, maybe you do the research, but I would say the research is still, and not just because my background's in research, and the research is still it's not a nice to have, because even though you have all this industry expertise, the customer behavior might have changed even from 2 months ago. So being able to, and research again, I use it very loosely, it's still, do my customers, who are my customers? Because at the end of the day, for the goal for your MVP and your research is the ICP, ideal customer profile. Like, who is your, if I were doing the research, is, who is my target investor? Where do I go to meet an investor that needs help with diligence? Who is it? Is it the early stage? Is it the late stage? Is it med tech? What is it? I'm focusing on early stage, but maybe that's not true. And then I get asked, well, do you help PE, private equity? I'm like, well, depends. Like, what stage? So having, so the kind of the non-answer, so the first one is like, yes, you could start building if you have the expertise. Two, well, you might want to research first, but then of course the third answer is like, do both. Because as you build your MVP, you're getting it in front of customers, you're getting that feedback, so that's still research. And I would say the research, again, very loosely, does not stop, because what you'll probably see is the customers that have joined in the beginning are not going to be the ones that are the ones that are going to get you to that scale, because what you'll see is, you learn how are customers using it, who's getting quickly to the aha moment, to the revenue, and maybe you end up focusing on that and pivoting. And so I think there's no shame to doing a hybrid approach, but it's whatever gets you to the make helps you make whatever decision you need to make faster. It's kind of my non-answer.
Yeah, I mean, it touches on two things. You've got lean methodology, and then you've got project management kind of like mixed in there. And the point of lean methodology is to move as quickly as you can while taking on the least amount of risk, and ideally making no sacrifices. That way, you consistently have as much resources available as possible to learn and do the iterative cycle that you're talking about, where you're consistently running these tests and either optimizing what's working or making pivots because something's not working, right? And then the other thing is just doing, the project management side of things, which is making sure you're doing things in the correct order. And this is why I said, to I think Hussein, right? Who asked that about oh, Irfan. Yeah, do you start moving from or no? Do you do MVP first or research? Research is always first in my opinion, because how do you know what the MVP should be before you do any research? Even if you have expertise, you still want to spend some time refining what that idea is, that concept, your MVP in the context of, like you're talking about, Irina, who your ICP is, who these people are, where to find these people, and this touches on Junie's questions about where do I find these people who are in this or that fit my target customer profile or my ideal customer profile, and you got to do the research. You got to talk to them, talk to one, and be like, hey, where you spend time with other people like you? Oh, we got this group. We meet every weekend and we hang out. Oh, okay, well, cool. Go to that group and talk to those people and hang out and learn from them, right? Or if it's like some other thing where it's like, oh, there's this conference that happens, or these other types of like symposiums, whatever. Put yourself in those situations. And if it's like you're talking about, Junie, it's education. Well, you need to figure out who is necessary for you to have an ecosystem for your business. Is it only students, or is it educators, or is it a mix of both? Administrators? What is it? Who are these people? And you got to go and spend time with each of them, because you got to keep in mind that each one of these individuals have different needs and wants and expectations for how they're going to interact with a product like this. And you need to make sure that you design something that is catered to each one of them uniquely within the larger product suite. Okay, so all these different things are super important. Yeah. Okay, so there's a few more questions that I think Justin had a follow up. I don't remember if we got to.
Before we go to the
Yeah.
follow-up, I think Hussein had a question, because I want to tackle everyone's first question before we go to the follow-ups, because I know multiple people had multiple follow-ups, which is great. But yeah, let's do that question. So, building a platform for expert consultations, but I'm struggling to attract the experts. I can provide them with analytics, early booking links, and payment gateways, but they could easily just set up their own sites. What is the actual value I can offer to convince them to join my platform instead of doing it themselves? How do I make it a no-brainer? This is a really great question, because this applies to honestly everyone, right? Like, what value are you bringing? And um this is the value bringing, so it goes, so kind of three different ways, right? For any marketplace, you have the supply and demand, and if your supply is not even joining, like your experts, to your point, then you haven't brought them enough value. So then the question comes back to, you know when you're having your conversations with customers, what is it that they want? Right? Back to the customer discovery. What is it that they want? Is it, do they want exposure? And what is it about the exposure? Do you have those network effects to get them, where they can't go? Is it about education? And it's similar to, Junie's question too, of like the customers. It's very, very similar, right? Like, what are you providing? Do they want to learn from each other? Is it let's say discounts to conferences? Um, Having that understanding of what that is so that you can summarize that value will go a long way. And I will tell you, I completely agree. There are many expert platforms, and finding the right one and making that rev share is really, really hard. I found one that actually, again, not affiliated. I joined and then it imploded within 2 years. It was two co-founders, and then I think they just disagreed about the direction. And so what that one worked, it was a yearly membership. There were educational trainings for executives, so the focus was executives. It was trainings by the community members, so there was a panel, there was a Slack channel, everyone offers a Slack channel. There were opportunities to speak, and then it was connected to an investment arm, so you can also then become an advisor to startups, because they're always looking for fractional executives or advisors. So it kind of helped to align the incentives between who wants to do it for education, who wants to do speaking opportunities, who wants to do, and I thought it was a great community. And then again, it was, two founders went in different directions, imploded, does not exist, haven't found anything similar. Which is, I'm not to say you should reinvent their wheel, but to find out, who is your target audience and what is that network. And in the beginning, I think the network started with one of the co-founders networks of executives, and then they brought other people in. You can join for free for as many events as you wanted. And then again, I'm not affiliated. It does not exist anymore. But to get an idea of like, how do you bring experts? So again, what is it that they want? What is lacking? And if it helps, again, because I do mentor a bunch of different accelerators, every time there's a new one, I ask, and actually I have a blog post on my website of just like, what do I look for in a new accelerator besides asking for outcomes? It's like, what do we, like, can I learn from other mentors? Like I enjoy, again, not affiliated with Gary's at all, but Gary hosts, the VIP lunches. It's an opportunity to meet and learn from other mentors, which does not exist in other communities. So being able to say, okay, sure, I'll join. Like I enjoy that so much. And being able to, be on panels now where I'm learning from Gary as much as I'm learning from all of your questions, brings value to me personally, but may not be true for other attendees and speakers. So hopefully that helps. I think hopefully that helps. We got everyone's except Justin's follow up. I don't know if Gary, you want to add anything? I know we have 2 minutes and then I unfortunately have to go.
No, that's good. Yeah, we can. Yeah, let's get Justin's
Okay.
follow up. Yeah.
I think that's the last one. I'm cautious in sharing the real mode of my idea too broadly out of concern is being stolen. When talking with potential investors, how do I evaluate who's trustworthy to share the full pitch? So this is such a great question because this comes up a lot. What you'll hear is that investors don't sign NDAs because if they have a specific thesis, for better or for worse, they probably hear they get no joke, 1,000 of very similar ideas. And so for them to sign an NDA, they wouldn't be able to listen to anyone else. I think going back to, if I may, our earlier discussion is what do the customers really want? And I'm not saying, because I also don't know what your mode is, but if your mode is, and I'm not saying it is, but I see a lot of startups that become wrapper for those, tools like Gemini, ChatGPT. And then if they say we're the wrapper, then it's okay, we just gave away our mode. And I would say the mode should probably come from either or and your lived experience in that industry. Again, going back to, okay, I'm an educator, I'm building a community, or I'm building this for medtech for the HIPAA compliant um, apps that is going to take someone a long time to, I'm learning from our customers how they're using the data. And actually, our initial customers are not who we're solving for. We're actually solving it for the CISOs, the executive suite, and cybersecurity who has a specific thing and have just been hacked. And we have this guarantee and we give this certificate. And so that aligns the value and then makes it a no brainer. Again, to somebody's earlier question of just like, how do we get people on our platform? So hopefully that helps. Amazing questions. We're going to do this again in a month. I think it's February 19th. So if there's more questions, feel free to join then. But really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for having me, Gary.
Yeah,
And thank you, everyone, for your questions.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're always amazing and so helpful. And yeah, Justin, the other thing too is talk to a suitable lawyer, review ones that do deals that represent the founders with deals. They'll be able to help you understand what you can share and what you should not share. And most of the things you can share, because like Irina touched on, it's your lived experience and your unique understanding and biases that are going to determine the type of experience your product and service is providing people, the brand you're building, which is going to be unique. And that's really what stands out between like Pepsi and Coke, for example, right? So like there's so many examples of just so many things being the same at the high level, but they're very drastically different in how they're done, how they're executed. That's why execution means everything, why they, it's commonly said. But yeah, Irina, again, thank you so much for this. And yeah, I appreciate you helping start the year off in such a lovely fashion. And yeah, hopefully see you at the lunch soon. And everyone, thank you for being bold and brave, sharing questions, not being afraid. Hopefully everyone got something really good out of this, and we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.